clerical grease of Islam is not the only ingredient in the forever melting pot of New York City. Every now and then, within the depths of its musical underground, something remarkable is created, like Taqwa Core, an Islamic punk rock. The term Taqwa Core was invented by a young writer who published a novel under the same name, and laid a blueprint for a Muslim youth movement that embodied protest and the fear of God. A Harvard graduate and a rising star of American literature, Michael Muhammad Knight converted to Islam at the age of 16, after reading the autobiography of Malcolm X. At 17, he left his mother's home in Rochester and traveled to Pakistan to study Islam in its traditional Sunni form. That's one way to protest. Michael's religious journey was the basis for several documentaries, including a book which later turned into a film adaptation. We had the opportunity to meet with Michael in New York City and ask him several questions which he was eager to answer.
Do I believe in God? Yeah, I believe in God. My own existence is pretty baffling to me. So, I don't know why I'm here. I think I'm here for something. I believe in Allah. I'm not totally convinced that I can escape my human limitations to understand Allah, or to know what it is I believe in when I say I believe in Allah. But I think there's something.
Despite his well-established celebrity status, one could still see traces of the rebel that challenged all conventional norms and turned to a religion that would seem foreign to his ethnicity and social standing.
I am an Islamist. I am the Antichrist. Most squares can make most wanted lists, but my, how I stay inside.
I feel like the Quran is my language for approaching Allah, like my script for relating to Allah. As for whether it came from a supernatural source, or if I believe in, an angel flying down and saying, here you go, I don't really have a stable position on that. I just know that it's my particular technology that I'm using, to understand the divine. And, honestly, I've drawn value from the Quran, not from its source, but from actually what I do with it. So.
Nonetheless, in regards to the current state, Michael Muhammad Knight can be seen as a typical contemporary representative of the Muslim community. Disappointed in the outdated traditional religious institutions, plagued with contradictions and distrustful to any form of innovation, be it reformation or mathematical evidence in the Quran.
What would it mean for me if there was a mathematical principle to the Quran? I think that would be pretty cool. It wouldn't change the price of bread for me necessarily. I don't know if it would be evidence that the Quran is divine. I don't know if it would do that to my satisfaction.
On the other hand, Michael's unique experience allows him to see today's situation both inside and out, distinguishing a combination of cultural, social, and economical factors that influence Islam as a whole and every Muslim individually.
I think when we talk about problems like, the condition of the Muslim world or whatever, we have to realize first that there's not such a thing as the Muslim world. There's no such thing as the Muslim world. There's no such thing as the Ummah. There's no, Islamic civilization versus a Western civilization. Like, it just doesn't exist because Muslims are so diverse. there are so many different cultures that have Islam as an ingredient in it. You know, there's no such thing as Islamic culture, Muslim culture, you know, Muslim countries. Like, it doesn't exist. You know, I mean, my Islam is derived largely from American sources, you know, indigenous American sources such as, you know, Elijah Muhammad. But, you know, I draw from all kinds of different sources, you know, from the classical tradition, from modern tradition. And, you know, we like to treat Islam as this one big monolith, and it's just not. And it never has been, you know, it never really has been. It's always been fragmented, it's always been diverse. So, you know, I think first we have to look at the complexity of the situation.
According to the young writer, the modern state of Islam is a blend of contradictory traditions hidden behind the lack of unity and clear content.
At this point, for me, if I had to define the word Islam for someone with no background, no previous encounter with it, I would say that Islam is a family of traditions, all loosely, more or less connected to this historical event of the Prophet and his career. And this is a very, very diverse body of traditions. And it doesn't necessarily hold itself together as one coherent tradition because, you know, you can find anything within, you know, Islam. You can find anything in there. So I would just take, you know, just speaking from what I can observe in history, I would just say Islam is a very diverse body.
Which leaves today's Muslims with a dilemma: to continue with the flow, rejecting any attempt to utilize critical thinking in search for the ultimate truth, or turn to marginal extremist interpretations, incorporating riot, anarchy, and rebellion.
I'm Muslim and I'm not a terrorist, you know, and I think the discussion of Muslims and terrorism, the way it's being framed in today's climate, really sets up this false opposition between, like, you have traditional conservative Orthodox Muslims here, and over here you have liberal, rational, moderate Muslims, and I don't believe that exists, that distinction exists, because, you know, for me, like, I've said lots of crazy things in my work. I've said lots of heretical stuff, and some people who were very, very quote-unquote conservative Muslims, you know, treated me as their brother, you know, and they were respectful to me and kind to me, you know, no matter what I was saying or doing, you know, no matter how irresponsible or careless I was. So, you know, I don't believe that every single intolerant conservative person wants to kill someone like me. You know what I mean? Like, the world is just too complicated for that, you know? So you know, a lot of us fall into this trap where, like, any conservative Sunni, we call them a Wahhabi, we call them a, you know, Salafi or whatever, and, like, the world is just diverse. You know, the world is just, you know, there's all kinds of different Muslims. So, you know, there's Muslims that, I don't know, you know, I've prayed behind female imams, you know, I've prayed behind women, and I've prayed in mosques that don't have a space for women. They don't even allow women in there. And it's all Islam. You know, I don't believe that one is the fake Islam and one is the real Islam. We're all just doing the best we can. And I always want to avoid a conversation in which, you know, you have everyone taking part in this conversation is split into two sides, because in reality there's a lot more than two sides.
In an attempt to solve this dilemma without discriminating between pure and false Islam, Michael Muhammad Knight found his own unique way of religious expressionism. Somehow he managed to combine the uncombinable, a Muslim notion of fear of the Almighty with the aggressive nature of punk rock.
So my integration of Islam and punk rock came from a very wounding experience with Islam as I knew it. When I first converted, you know, I didn't know anything about Islam. I couldn't distinguish between all these different voices. So just, you know, I went to the mosque and what people told me was Islam, and I just took it. They just spoon-fed it to me. And when I started to become disillusioned with that kind of Islam, which was this very hardcore, very Sunni revivalist type of Islam. I became very confused and disillusioned, and I didn't really have any place to turn because I was so ashamed of my confusion. You know, like I couldn't go to the mosque and say what I felt. So then I started hanging out with the punk rock kids, and the punk rock kids were just like, you know, be who you are and don't apologize for who you are and don't negotiate with anybody and you don't owe anybody a thing. Like, you are who you are and just stand tall in the world, and, you know, you don't have to be diplomatic about something as stupid as whether you believe in God or not. You know what I mean? Like, this is, you know, you don't owe anybody anything for that. So, you know, I took that spirit and I internalized it, and that really gave me the courage to be who I was.
The characters of his novel, The Taqwa Course, are young Muslims living in present-day America who no longer choose to live behind a wall of old-fashioned conservative Islamic traditions. Born in the West, they adopt the positives and the negatives of their environment as they set out on a quest to find their own path towards God, disregarding prejudices and archaic religious customs.
I wanted to inject that into my experience of Islam because I still very much identified with the Islamic tradition, but I didn't know, you know, do I get to call myself a Muslim? Do I believe everything I'm supposed to believe? You know, I don't know. Like, I don't have a stable position on these doctrines, but when I'm by myself and I want to pray, like, I pray the way that I was taught. I pray as a Muslim, you know. When I want to have those experiences, like, I go to mosques, you know, even if it tears me up inside, you know, I still want to go to that mosque. So what do I do with it? How do I claim ownership of it? And punk rock to me was the way to claim ownership of it.
Michael Muhammad Knight's Taqwa Course.
After self-publishing the book, the author's inspiration for writing took a turn towards a new musical direction. Taqwa Core became popular, and Michael became an icon, expressing thoughts and dreams of the whole generation of American Muslims.
I wrote this crazy novel about these Muslim punk rock kids who just do everything they're not supposed to do. They get drunk, you know, they hook up, they cross out a verse of the Quran if they don't like it, you know, like that kind of thing. Like, they are just these crazy punk rock kids, just total anarchy in their religion. And what I was trying to do with that was create this space where nobody owned my religion, you know, where, you know, this punk house that I was imagining was like a mosque with no imam in it. You walk in and it's like, Islam is yours. It belongs to you, and you're the one who defines it. So that's, you know, that's what I wanted. I wanted to reclaim myself as a Muslim.
I would like to have more informal chat with you.
Okay.
Okay. Are you rolling?
Yeah, but you want to be in frame here?
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, Michael, I didn't know you, I didn't hear about you until my friend from Kazakhstan talked about you. I say, well, he is a kind of crazy guy. I am semi-crazy too. It would be good to see each other. I never did punk. I don't really understand. And when I see them, seems kind of a little bit unusual. And rock, I am musically challenged. I prefer certain pop songs, but not much rock. Therefore, it doesn't seem we have much commonality in that regard. But commonality, I think, between me and you, you are free spirit. You dislike hegemony. You dislike power brokers between you and God. Could be imam or pope or any clergyman in different robes, correct? Yeah, I think in that regard we are the same. And this is the spirit of Muslim. In Islam, according to the Quran, not according to the very people who want to justify their vested interest, according to the Quran, there is no anyone between you and God. You directly communicate with God. You don't have confession sessions with some priest. And therefore, that spirit, I love it. It doesn't mean I agree with them going drunk and stupid or you know, some other stuff or the sound of their music.
In spite of his considerable success and growing popularity, Michael is uncertain when it comes to many controversial issues of his conception of contemporary Islam. Outwardly defining himself as a Muslim, but at the same time doubting the divine origins of the Quran due to the lack of firm rational proofs, Michael indeed represents deep and insoluble conflict of a generation. The abyss between rational thinking and liberal values of the West, and irrationality and totalitarianism of Islamic tradition in the East. Irrationalism of tradition leads to either fanaticism or aggressiveness, or as in Michael's case, to total agnosticism in religion. Michael thinks that absolutely all interpretations of religion are acceptable and equally valuable, but allowing all, Michael in reality doesn't believe in any, even the Quran, to which he perhaps unintentionally confessed.
That sounds great, but I think, it would be great to, to follow those instructions completely, but I don't know if that's possible. And I think that defining it for ourselves is ultimately all that we have, because we really can't escape ourselves. I mean, we all like let's say, I want to understand what the Quran says. I mean, let's say I believe 100% that the Quran is supernaturally revealed, and that I have access to the Quran in its complete form with no alterations or anything. I mean, those are two big assumptions that I'm not settled on, but let's just say for, sake of argument that I had those two beliefs, strong.
The evolution of Michael Muhammad Knight's convictions is far from being over. We sincerely hope that he continues his quest to uncover the truth with the help of his reason and God's Quran.
I'm very limited with Arabic. I'm very weak with Arabic. I have access to certain information historically. I could investigate the context of the revelation. I'm limited in that regard. I'm limited in the ways that I read these things. I'm limited in how I was taught to read, how I was taught to interpret, the assumptions that I would have about approaching a text like the Quran, the historical moment that I live in. To say that there's one, absolute meaning to the Quran, I think it would disqualify, the vast majority of people who didn't happen to grow up in that moment where they could access that meaning. So, it would be awesome if, okay, here's a message from Allah, boom, follow what I say, easy. But I just don't believe that kind of absoluteness is possible. I mean, I know that me personally, like if I say that my reading of the Quran, based on the I got to choose a translator, to work through. I got to choose different, historical examinations of the context in which the Quran was revealed, certain, theories of literary criticism that I might apply, all those things. If I make all those choices for myself, and then say, okay, I'm going to find the absolute meaning of the Quran, that's idolatry to me. That's shirk. That's saying my brain has unlocked everything. That's arrogant. So I say we define it for ourselves to recognize that I can't do anything but define it for myself. Because if I said I'm not defining it for myself, then I'm taking what I've done, the work that I've done intellectually, and saying that is the real meaning.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Kayfa alakum, Yaki?
Good, good.
How you doing?
Good, thank
Man, I'm the fucking proof of everything this fucking shit says, the whole shit. Quran tells you not to drink, right?
you. Yeah.
Don't fucking drink. I went ahead and I fucked that all up. I fucked my whole life up. I fucking fingering little schoolgirls' twats and then fucking puking in their hair. That's the kind of shit that I do. That's my life. Quran tells you to keep your dick dry until you're married, right? You keeping your dick dry?
Yes.
You know how many haram cunts I've had? Now I got green shit coming out of my dick. And I got cauliflowers coming out of my asshole. You want cauliflowers growing out your asshole?
No.
So read your fucking Quran. Get it right in there. Get your fucking Quran right in there. Get it right in here. And live it out. And don't forget. Or else you end up like me.